Okay.
Hello, everybody. Ghosts of Hawaii. You know who. Back again with another show. And actually, this particular show that we're doing tonight, I have been wanting to do for a very long time. I have been putting out notifications, flyers, and everything for about a month now. So here we are, finally. We're going to do this interview tonight with a very close and dear friend of mine who I've known for many, many years. And tonight he's going to be sharing some of his encounters with what happened to him while living on Kauai. We got Kuloa, born and raised. How's it, Obaki? Hold on one second. I see your question. I mean, your greeting. Couldn't wait for this episode of Ghosts of Hawaii because I was born and raised on Kauai. Awesome. Faye, you're here tonight. Faye, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here tonight. Yeah, guys, this is a exciting show for me. And also, the person that we'll be interviewing tonight, we've spent literally years out in the field in some very scary locations. As a matter of fact, if we were to do shows about our experiences as well, that alone will take several shows. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're introducing our guest, and what he will be doing is again sharing some of his encounters with some very scary things that happen on Kauai, um, and encounters with darkness. And hi, Cindy, good to see you as well. Thank you, everybody who's coming in here tonight. Aristocat, good to see you as well too. And after that, just to let you know, I will be talking about some further shows that you folks are going to absolutely love with experiences that my friend had on Old Poly Road, the real Old Poly Road. And these are very scary things. Cindy said hi to you, by the way. Faye says Kauai for a while, and I stayed in Kauai for a while in a house that was haunted. Well, you know what? Guess what? You're going to have something very similar, something very, very similar with our guest tonight. So, without any further ado, my wonderful friend that I've known for years, and like I said, we've gone out and we've seen some scary places, and not only seen them but experienced them. My friend Joe Sereno. Joe, welcome to Ghosts of Hawaii, my friend. Thank you.
Oh, aloha. Thank you for having me on tonight. Looking forward to it.
I've
And saying a shout out to fellow people from Kauai. That's nice to hear.
Yeah. That was one of the things when I started posting. When I started posting about this, there was like a few people that said that they were from Kauai, so they were like really interested in hearing some of the things that you're going to be sharing with us here tonight. And I know that the stories that you're going to be talking about, these are experiences that you yourself have like shared with me confidentially over the years. And some of this stuff is just like it happened yesterday, as far as what we've discussed about your experiences growing up on Kauai. And so, first and foremost, what I wanted to ask you is, what was life like living on Kauai? What was it like growing up over there overall,
Oh, well,
besides the paranormal?
man, for me growing up there, um, it was very rural, very country like. At the time when I was living there, the population was, I believe, something like 28,000. You have that many people living in Makiki and Waikiki. So it was a spread out, vast area. Life was a lot slower. The area that I grew up in on Kauai was called Omao. For those who aren't familiar with the geography there, it would be, I guess, 6 miles north of Toipu Beach, which is known for its white sand beaches and its beautiful hotels, I guess. So we were like 6 miles north of that.
Okay,
And
one
as
moment.
country as it could get, we literally were looking across a pasture filled with a couple of head of cattle.
Oh, awesome. One moment, please. One moment. Okay, for all of you that are trying to, well, because I got someone on here right now saying, "Can I share a scary dream that I had?" And since that dream, my life has been a living hell. New ODB, of course. Josh Chi says hello, Joe. But you can share that. But any questions you have for our guests, please feel free to engage and talk amongst yourself. go ahead and do that. But questions or anything else for myself or the guests, keep it towards the end of the program. Yeah, because we will do a question and answer like we always do when we interview our guests. And Koloa says, Omal, that's the south side of Kauai. Okay, so that's what people are saying. Anyway, folks, I may not be talking to you too much, so don't take any offense with that because I'm going to be focusing on our guests here. So, Joe, you grew up in a very slow, I guess, mellow type environment. I've been to
Yeah, it was laid back. It wasn't considered a rich community at the time. The more affluent lived in the Waiku area and such, or Likui. So this was like those that were not high on the income flux there. It's frugal living and stuff.
Okay. I myself have visited. I visited Kauai in 1986 and absolutely fell in love with it. As a matter of fact, I was so enamored with Kauai that I actually wept on the plane going back home to Honolulu. So it's a beautiful place. And before we delve into the darkness that we'll be talking about here tonight, what are some of your more fonder memories of living up there? What was the nice things about living on Kauai?
Oh, the beautiful body surfing beaches before Eva wiped out the reef area. We had one of the best body surfing beaches on the South Shore, Brennike's. I mean, there was large tubular waves. I mean, they would be gigantic in the winter months. That and it was the body surfing. I was in love with body surfing. That was my main hobby.
Awesome.
That and I guess driving around the island. This picturesque. It was laid back, peaceful, not very populated, as I pointed out. So there's fond memories of that also. Enjoying the beauty.
Awesome. One of the things that you shared with me that I found fascinating is the lack of traffic lights. I believe it is.
Oh my God, yeah. I think the only area that had numerous traffic lights was the epicenter, the city of Likui, because that was considered the largest city-like structure in the area. Every place else didn't have traffic lights. Oh, except in Koloa, where, I don't know, they had one near the dump for some reason, I guess for the cane trucks or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so outlandish to even have that situated out there. But yeah, there was the only place that was plentiful with traffic lights was Ligui, the most modern, largest town on the island at the time.
Koloa said, "Get plenty more lights now."
What's it?
Koloa said, "There's plenty more lights now."
Oh, oh wow. Okay, yeah. Like I haven't been back in decades. So I can't even imagine what kind of changes have happened over the years.
Mm. Yeah, because like I said, I went in '86. It was absolutely. I went there in '86. Absolutely amazing. Uh, but I gotta tell you, for me visiting Kauai before after this, we're gonna start with what happened to you. Visiting Kauai, I found it to be a very magical place. As a matter of fact, since we're talking magical, we discussed something earlier today that was very interesting. Now, Kauai is known for menahunis and like the menahuni pond and the menahuni ditch and everything over there. They're
Right.
infamous for that. But you shared something very interesting, didn't you, about Kauai?
Oh,
And
about the census?
yeah,
Oh, yeah, was that it? Yeah, there was a census, and this happened way before my time. I think it was way back, the 1800s, you said,
mm-hmm.
where they actually had documentation of menehune on the census poll.
Yeah, that was in
There was like
18.
a number of 60 or 65 menehune listed on the census in 1820.
That's it, 1820. There was a census done, folks, on the island of
So we're
Kauai.
talking legal documentation,
That is so.
for whatever reason, they included menehune on that census.
That's incredible. And when we talked about just ideas as to how did they know there were Menehune, and also the fact is how well I guess what I'm wondering about is how did they coincide and live with people or find these Menehune to do the census? But that's all in the past. We can't get that information back anymore. Hi Boogie, good to see you and everybody else that is watching tonight. Thank you always for being here for the show. So now that we've talked about all of this, and like you told me, you grew up in Omao. What are some of your
Yeah.
what are some of your most early memories of living in Omao for you?
I guess the proximity to the mountains and stuff. It was like very cold. It was pretty rainy, um, but it would clear up a lot more during the summer, where you could actually feel the heat and stuff. Also, it was seasonal,
Hmm.
but that was like the early memories. That playing with my friends and stuff, going on little hikes and excursions near the riverbeds.
Awesome. One of the first questions I wanted to ask you is, at some point in your life, and I think this happens to a lot of children, something started to change. And would you like to tell us how the changes started to happen, as far as your experiences with, you can call it supernatural, paranormal, hauntings, whatever you want to call it as. But could you kind of,
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I guess my earliest memories happened in, I guess, maybe like 1970 or 71. I was probably 10 or 11 at the time, and my dad was trying to renovate this house. It was a large house, actually. It was a 5 room, 1 bath house, and it was situated on a quarter acre of land. And he acquired it all for a price of like $5,000. We were wondering why no one had tried to acquire the property, and why we, as coming from the island of Oahu, was able to do so. Later on, I found out, much later in life, that there was a suicide that took place on the property, and it happened on the outside laundry room. It's a tall room, and it had a large cross beam, and I guess the owner, the gentleman of the house, had hung himself um, on the property. So I guess that's why we ended up with a great discount on the property itself. But I didn't, as I point out, I didn't learn about it till much later in life.
hmm what I'm wondering is, they talk about selling homes, well, more so nowadays, that you have to kind of give full disclosure about whether or not the place is haunted. I don't think those rules applied back then, but uh,
I'm
obviously,
not sure if it did. This was like, you see, like originally we moved there much earlier, but my first memories was like in the 1970s, because beyond that I don't really recall much. We originally moved over from Oahu in '62 because my parents had gotten divorced.
okay.
So the original people to move over was my grandmother, my father, and myself. He had sole custody of me, so we made that pilgrimage over to Kauai. And I'm not sure if that was part of the clause in disclosures back then, or
Yeah.
maybe it was, and he decided to just act upon the deal regardless because of the price.
Did you at any time, with that laundry room with the suicide and everything, at any time at all, did you feel anything weird going in there? I mean, you had to.
Oh, definitely,
Oh,
definitely.
okay, tell us
As
about that.
I aged,
Yeah.
part of my duties and chore list was to go down to that room and to put the pilot light on and light the gas heater. So I remember just cringing at the thought, because even though it would be late in the afternoon when I did it, when you walked into the room, it was just extremely dark. And I always felt like something was peering down at me. I mean, I just couldn't shake it. I had a hard time concentrating on a simple task of lighting a pilot light. I'd be looking over my shoulder, trying to light it, hoping that it would go on as quick as possible so I could leave. It was something I never, ever looked forward to doing. Never.
Let me ask you, did that sensation of being watched, did it come from that area, the cross beams, you think? The cross beams, is that where you...
Absolutely. The feeling I got came from above me. And it seemed like something was just peering down at me, angrily maybe or stuff, but it just had a weird sense. And like I said, the darkness in there didn't help the situation any. I just couldn't wait to escape finishing that task.
Wow. I want to ask you something. Because I know we all of this stuff, folks, we've talked about before, but it's good to bring up right now. So when you're in the laundry room where the suicide took place, and you said that it was very dark, were there windows and stuff to let light in?
Oh, in that area where the suicide took place?
Yeah, were there windows in there at all, or?
There was just no windows. There was just a doorway that led into the small room. And dimension-wise, length and width wasn't very large, but the height, the enormity of the ceiling, was quite high.
Okay.
I guess it would equal the height of the rest of the roof line.
Okay.
So it is easily in the 9 to 10 foot mark above the ground. The beam itself is probably at about 8.5, about 8 feet or so.
And this always happened no matter what. You go into this room and you just feel like, I guess, a hostile presence.
I would feel terrified, to be honest. I never wanted to do that, but my dad gave me a list of things to do, and that was one of them. See, my dad was pretty pragmatic. You know, he was like ex-military, so he didn't scare very easily. So he thought anything that I said was like either imaginary or misidentified. That was the key words whenever I would bring something up.
Another.
And I guess it came from serving in the military, you know. He served in Guadalcanal during World War II. So he was a hardened man, actually.
What I was going to ask you is, was there any other locations on the property that had weird things happening? And I know of one that you told me about, but I just wanted to know if anything else chimes into your thoughts.
Well, there were incidents that happened outside of the house that happened a couple of times, and I'll bring that up as the night progresses.
Sure, great, really good to hear that. So you mentioned growing up. We'll look at the house. That this is the focal point where a lot of these strange things happen in your life. But you talked about having friends and childhood friends, and you folks went out and I guess you went out and explored the area. Very different back then. No social media, no video games, no nothing. It was old school all the way.
Yeah, there was a lot less of technical distractions. There was no internet. It was the generation of television, I guess.
Right.
That was starting to make the landscape.
So
Just back before that time, people would gather around the table and converse. Or as radio came about, that might be a means of entertainment at one point. But during my childhood, TV had come into the picture.
Okay.
So that became a prominent place of entertainment for people during that time period.
So, where did you guys hang out growing up and stuff? What kind of stuff did you guys do?
Well, for us, if we wanted to, you know, we were allowed to visit each other's yards and houses and stuff. But when we wanted to be adventurous, we were allowed by our parents to go a little further, and they would let us go down towards the riverbeds and streams in the area, which was, you know, not very far from, you know, my friend's property. We would just go down the slope, go down another little slope towards the river, and there we'd be in our our playground.
Did anything happen in that place at all, or any places you went to?
Oh well, yeah. For us, when there would always be me and my three friends. We were always together, so we weren't overly disturbed when occurrences would happen. There would be like a mimicking or what sounded like childlike voices, and we would look around, but we wouldn't get overly startled because we were together. But we're never able to really tell what the child was saying. But one of the distinct things that we heard was like children laughing, and that kind of shook us. But once again, since we were in a group and nothing really occurred, we would hear it and it would disperse and not come back. So we looked at it as more of an oddity than something we couldn't handle as a group.
Did any of the local the local residents have a story behind it,
Oh
or
yeah,
did
local the younger ones had similar incidents occur, and there was like a groundswell where the people in the area was starting to call these events children of the water, and it was because these laughters or voices were emanating from bodies of water, whether it was streams, rivers, or reservoirs. You know, people would go to the reservoirs to go fishing to spend the day, and spoke to other people who lived further down the road in Omaha, and they had stories also that were similar about, you know, children's voices and laughter. Nobody had any really seen anything.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was a groundswell of that was going around. We thought it was just something that was happening locally in our area. Till this day, I'm not sure if it occurred elsewhere, but it was pretty prominent in Omaha.
Yeah, that's well. I mean, just like you talked about the laundromat. I mean, the laundry room that you had when you were down at the river and you heard these voices and laughter of children. Did you feel threatened, or were you being mocked or anything with the laughter?
Oh, you mean down by the riverbeds and
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah. Did you feel anything like it was threatening, or was it trying to mock you or anything at all?
It seemed, it was like twofold. One, it seemed mischievous, but secondly, it seemed like, just maybe just to me and my friends, it seemed like it wanted you to follow it and go further into the forest. But we were never that brave. We would stay in our situated area where we felt somewhat safe. But other people have described it like it was trying to lure you to follow.
Like the almost like a calling ghost type thing.
I guess you could call it that. Yeah, per se.
Interesting.
Sure.
Interesting. Well, and that's pretty close to where you lived, or kind of far away.
Well, my friends had a stream that was below their property. It wasn't part of their property, but we were able to get down to that point by just going down the hill,
Mm-hmm.
not very far.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we experienced it.
Interesting. So let's focus a little bit back towards the house and everything, because the house is, I think, from what you shared with me, like a, I guess, where everything like a ground zero for a lot of the experiences that you had and such. But besides the laundry room, what exactly you think was the one of the first indicators that there was something going on in the house? What was one of the first things?
Oh, okay. Well, one of my earliest memories of something was it would be the sound of what sounded like small stones or gravel hitting along, being thrown out the windows. It was loud enough to wake you, but not loud enough to make you feel terrified.
Mm.
It wasn't an every night occurrence, but when it did happen, you did awake because you did hear it. It was a distinct sound, but it wasn't enough to fill you with terror per se.
Like someone was trying, like
And
someone was trying to get your attention.
definitely, definitely.
Okay.
Like I said, it wasn't an every night occurrence, but when it happened, you knew it was real.
Wow. Okay. So,
There was also, um, like I said, we lived on the top of the road in Omao. We were second house from the top, and from the top of the road, they situated a large lamp, and part of the beam was so strong that a little beam of it would go into my room and dissect my room. It would ended up, the light itself would end up shining on my closet. It wasn't annoying because, to be honest, I was at that age. I was still kind of afraid of the dark, and having it was like having an all-night night light on. So I found it actually kind of comforting. But there were times when I would hear footsteps out in the yard, and I would look out, and I wouldn't see anyone. So, I mean, I couldn't explain it. Then that's when I started to feel uneasy, was when I started hearing footsteps. It wasn't the pitter-patter of let's say, a stray cat going by, or even a dog or anything.
right.
It sounded like it was bipedal, like it walked on 2 feet.
Right.
But when I looked out into the yard, I couldn't see anything.
To
So
me,
that's when I started to worry a bit.
uh-huh. To me, that's one of the most scary things I've noticed about ghosts and hauntings is hearing footsteps or, like you said, voices or anything like that. But when it happens at night, and especially when it's near your home and you're experiencing these things, I think sometimes, for me at least, you just kind of really wonder. Your imagination can just really go crazy with all of that as far as who's out there doing that and why are they doing that. And as far as the light that you're talking about that you experience as a night light in your room, is
Well,
that
it was the beam of light from a lamp. It was like on the top of the road so that cars wouldn't run into each other. It was like a street lamp.
no, I mean, but
So it was pretty strong.
was it normal for that to happen? Was it normal for that to happen, or is this something that's a bit
It
odd?
was just the angle of the light that happened to go in. But like I said, I found it to be like a godsend because I had a fear of dark at that point in time.
Okay, hold on one second. Boogie, do me a favor, my friend. As I said before, yeah, if you folks have any questions or anything else you'd like to ask, please feel free to share them, but share them during the question and answer part of the interview. So we'll get to that question. Just repost the question, and yeah, we'll get to it. But again, everyone that's watching, please hold back on questions until we get to the actual part of the interview where we do questions and answers. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's go on with what we're talking about here. And aloha to everyone that
Oh yeah,
just came
part
in.
of the after hearing the footsteps out front, we began noticing.
Okay, but that's okay. It's okay, Boogie. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Okay, go on, Sereno. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, well, we were discovering like little puddles. I guess the consistency would be that of like mucous membrane, but it was like a bright yellow, and it was filled with like long dark hair.
Bruja, witches.
Like we wouldn't find it all the time, but there were times that we did find it. It wasn't an everyday occurrence, but we found it quite a few times just in that backyard area, especially. Nowhere else on the yard.
Bruja, witches. So let me ask you something. So when you experience the rocks that were thrown at the window, would it connect with the signs of these witches the following day? Is-
Well, the first event was the throwing of what sounded like the throwing of gravel or small pebbles,
yes.
and then there was the footsteps, and there'd be a break where I wouldn't hear the footsteps, and then it would come on, and then yeah, maybe the next day we would discover, a puddle of that substance that I described.
Yes,
And my dad said, oh, maybe it was just a dog getting sick. And I was like, no, I've seen dogs get sick. I've never seen them throw up anything like this.
no, it's witches.
Never.
It's witches. My family, my dad, them experienced that when they were growing up in Manoa. There's a whole thing about witches and stuff, as my sister is saying, with bruja and everything, with my family, and
Mm-hmm.
they've found the same thing. They found the same thing, and also if you watch the movie like Blair Witch Project, witches are known to leave traces of themselves when they show up. So yeah, again, you were hearing footsteps, and something was being thrown at the window. And the next day, you find that. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
witchcraft. That is witchcraft. Those are witches doing stuff like that, and that is unsettling. I mean, I don't know if there's
Yeah,
is
it was very unsettling. I mean, just the way it looked was scary to me.
I was going to say also, is there any connection, if you don't mind me sharing, with anything to do with your life or anything at all that has to do with like with the occult or anything at all that could be a
You mean
reason?
my family?
Yeah, yeah, or anything at all.
Well, I mean, it was whispered about that. Yeah, I'm not saying that it's true, but it was whispered, that my grandmother was a witch. At this point in time, she had moved away. I guess her and my dad had an argument, so she had moved away to back to this island. And it was during this time that these events were starting to occur.
Mm-hmm. That's well, that could be something that, of course, again, it's something that's in the past. So, there's everything's not, completely set in stone or anything like that. But yeah, you can kind of like see something of a connection there with knowing something like that as well. But so
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't normally shared with the children, but there were times when the adults would speak amongst themselves, we would kind of listen in, and we were hearing like these talks about her being such, being as such. It's kind of terrifying to hear that someone in your family might be aligned with that.
yeah, definitely. The whole thing too is that, I mean, was there anything else that you felt that was a connection with her? Just stories though, right? I mean, your interaction with your family and your grandma was pretty solid, right? Pretty good.
Yeah, there was some oddities about her, and in one hand, she was constantly saying the rosary and reading the Bible, and on the other hand, there were some nights when I would sleep in her bed as a youngster, but she would be telling me these. I can't remember specifically the stories, but they would be like horrific, scary tales.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't understand why she would be telling me such stories. So there was like a imbalance. Like she appeared to be one way, but at the same time there was that dark side and the whispers and rumors of her being a witch later on.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty unsettling.
Were they scared of her? Was your family scared of her?
To be honest, I believe they were, like all of her, the family, like her sons and daughters, If they spoke about her, it was like kind of not meant to be heard. I never ever heard them distinctly call her a witch. It was something that they spoke amongst themselves.
Oh, okay. How about your relationship with her? What was that like?
I'm sorry, my relationship with
Your grandma.
it
Your
seemed fine. She was very loving and caring. Early on, when she lived there, she did the majority of the cooking. She did a lot of gardening. Um, Laundry. She was always helpful in that sense.
mm-hmm,
Always a busybody
mm-hmm.
doing something helpful for the household. So I don't know. It just seemed odd that she did seem, to have another side to her. So it was almost like she had. I don't know if this is the correct phrase, but almost like she had a dual personality,
Mm-hmm.
one that she could flick on and off at will.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, when did she pass away?
My goodness. I think that happened a few years later. I guess when she was situated here on this island, she was staying at Holiday Manor, which is near Don Quixote,
Okay.
the now what used to be Holiday Mart. And she had gotten ill, and she was placed in a care home in Makiki. She finally passed away. She was there for quite a while, but she was fading and getting weaker. Um, while we were on Kauai, we would come and visit her like every few months as best we could and visit her in the hospital, the care home.
Mm-hmm.
But she passed away, I guess, somewhere in 71, might have been. She passed away, 71 or 72, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, but
Yeah, well,
yeah,
like I said, yeah,
and
thank you.
you're
It,
very
it, it was painful.
yeah. If you, especially if you're really close there, there's an affinity with grandmothers. You know, the things that you were talking about, like always cooking and doing things. You know, sometimes I think that your grandmother or Tutu Kane, they become like the rock of the family. You know, people turn to them
Well,
or
she was definitely the matriarch of the family. She was in total charge when, you could tell when the others, her daughters and sons, when she said something and spoke.
mm-hmm.
I mean, it was the law. It was like she gets the gavel. She was the judge. It was going to be done her way.
Oh, okay. That sounds like, well, yeah, my family had similar type. My family just, they really believed in listening to your elders and everything and all of that too. So understand that. But switching gears a bit, so after she passes, does anything start to happen in the house or were things happening
Yeah,
before?
there was. Yeah, well, for one thing, when she left, there was a loss of income that was coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to um, make ends meet, my dad started working part time, kind of that as leisure, doing odd jobs like painting or some light construction.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just to get maybe gifts for the holidays, Christmas or birthdays and such. But as time passed, more events happened. Like I mentioned, all of the events up to the point of finding the yellow goo out in the yard and stuff. But what happened was when she passed away, my dad took over her living quarters, the main master bedroom, and I took the smaller room right next to it. But during these times, after she passed, there was like some kind of threshold was broken, and evil seemed to be like seeping into the house.
What do you mean?
I guess just in the daytime, for instance. Previously, we had drapes and such put into the house for need, but it seemed at this point now that, I think it's going to sound weird, but light from the outside would have a hard time breaking into the inside of the house in the daytime. So you have this darkness during the day that wasn't there before. And this was, this was something I noticed. And it wasn't misidentification like, oh, it's a overcast day, or there's a storm brooding taking up the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
This would happen during like a summer day when the sun was bright. Light from the outside wouldn't go more than a few inches inward of the windows. It was like it hit a barrier. You wouldn't be in complete darkness, but it was definitely darker than it should have been.
So let me try to understand this correlation. This correlation you're talking about. So, after your grandmother passes and changes start to take place. So you're saying that physical light from the outside couldn't get into the house, but was there a change with the darkness in the house? Did the house seem more darker as well?
Yeah, the darkness. I mean, it was just like it was defiant. Light wasn't allowed in past more than a few inches of the window, and you could see it. It was like pretty scary, actually. But because of our circumstances, all the money my dad invested, we couldn't really afford to move. So we learned to live with it, I guess.
You had to adapt, adjust to what you were experiencing.
Yeah.
So there's this one incident that I wanted you to share, if you don't mind. Is it? And I wanted to know if this is one of the earlier things that happened. But one night you were sleeping, and what room was that in when the thing with the bathrobe happened?
Oh, okay. Well, there was a build-up to that.
Okay, go ahead. Do the build up. Do the build
I
up
was in
first.
the bathroom. My dad had constructed a makeshift closet. Basically, it was just a shelf and a couple inches of board nailed down to it with a pipe going through it. And on the pipe, I would hang like my school clothes.
Wait. Hold on one.
And my bathrobe.
Okay, hold on 1 second though. You said there was a build up. I'm intrigued by your build up. So what happened to the point where you encountered? Because that was scary. What happened with the bathrobe? What happened that led up to that event? What was the weird things that were happening?
Oh, well, the first thing was, things had calmed down for a bit. We weren't hearing the footsteps. We weren't finding the puddles of goo and stuff. So it seemed to have tamed itself down, whatever was around. But one morning, I don't know, I just felt like I was having a hard time sleeping. I guess part of it was anticipation. I wasn't getting deep sleep. I was always worried something might happen.
Mm-hmm.
But one night it did. I was in the room alone, and I heard a voice growl out, "Joey," in that kind of sound. It woke me out of my sleep, and I thought perhaps it was my dad, So I walked into his side and looked over, and he was kind of snoring and fast asleep. But I know I had heard a voice, or at least I believed I had. Part of me wanted to say, maybe I imagined it. Maybe there was something to my dad saying, you watch a lot of Night Gallery and Outer Limits, and you're projecting it. But, so a few days went by, and then all of a sudden I heard the voice again, with the same growl, saying, "Joey." And it was raspy and rough, but suddenly it was accompanied with a strike to my face.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I was in the darkness, I could hear I felt the impact. It wasn't something imagined. I could feel the warmth of the point of contact on the left side of my face. And there was that stinging sensation.
Someone hit you?
And, well, I could feel like, even in the darkness, I could feel like a slight swelling of my face.
Wow.
I spoke to my dad about it, and once again, tried to reassure me that it was just a bad dream, but I knew it wasn't. And then, so time had passed again, and it seemed like I was catching a break where nothing bad eventful. That already had scared the hell out of me. I was going through sleep deprivation at that point. Not wanting to close my eyes, pulling a blanket over me. All of those things I was doing just to feel safe.
Let me ask you
But
something.
one night
What did you?
lying down in the bed,
Okay. Yeah.
and I looked towards where the light was shining through onto the closet area. At that point, I had already taken a bath, and I'd gone to my room to rest. My dad was already, I guess, sleeping in his bed, and I had just hung up my bathrobe on a hanger.
Mm-hmm.
So I was lying in bed, and I started to look out the bathrobe, and it started to look like it was starting, believe it or not, starting to fill out, like instead of just a flat surface hanging from a hanger, it was now taking on dimensions, like the shoulder and deltoid area was taking form, like something was giving it form. The width of depth from the back to the chest was starting to fill in. And you could see, I didn't pay too much attention to the leg area, but you could see legs starting to form. I couldn't vocalize, I was speechless, and I couldn't say anything. Something just stole my voice. But as the more I watched it, the more it evolved, and it was starting to change. There was a profile of what appeared to be a face coming up from the neck and shoulder areas. And on the top of it, it seemed to have like a brightness, like a yellow. And I guess that was part of the eye or something. But you could also see like nodules being formed on the top of its skull. It actually looked like little horns were being formed on it. So finally, I was able to give myself sound. So I screamed, but my dad wasn't responding to it, even though he was in the next room. And then what the creature did was it slowly rotated its head, so I had no longer a profile, but I'm looking at the flat surface of the front of the face. So it had like these little horns on it. It had black pupils, but the yellow was like a bright yellow color in the eye area. And the skin didn't look like human skin. It looked, if anything, to give it a description, more, I guess, more reptilian than human. And it just smiled. It had this big smile that was looking at me. But it wasn't a smile that invited friendship. It was like a mocking smile. Like, what are you going to do now? So I decided the calling wasn't helping, so I needed to flee that room. So I decided I would run past it and dive low, like a baseball player diving through, low to the ground. So in case it stretched its arms out, it wouldn't grab me. So when I did that, I did make it to the other side. And I ran towards my dad and tried to wake him.
Mm-hmm.
He was having a hard time, so I ran up towards the light switch and turned on the light. He woke up out of his grogginess, and I explained. I was at this point I was mad at him because he didn't respond to my calls. So he said, "Well, let's take a look at it." When we went into the room, of course, what looked like to me, if I had to give it a one-word description, it would be demon. And it had disappeared. All that was left was the robe hanging. But I knew what I had saw. It just terrified me. So the rest of the evening I slept in his bed, but not really. I don't think I even really slept. I think I stayed up till morning, actually. But that's when I saw what I did.
How long did this last, from beginning to the end of this thing showing itself to you? How long did that take to happen or transpire?
Oh, the transformation of the robe filling in with the. Well, I would say it took. Like I said, I wanted to call out, but I wasn't able to vocalize. I wanted to move, but at the same time, I was scared and mesmerized. I wasn't quite sure what I was looking at, so I'm waiting for it to evolve. I would say the amount of time that it took was probably from just the hanging robe to filling up. I would say maybe it seemed longer, but it was probably just 20 or 25 seconds.
Jeez. I mean, when people see things, matrixing or otherwise, I mean, usually they'll see something right away, or it's rather quickly when it happens. But this actually, whatever this was, again, talk about the rock being thrown at the window and everything. We're dealing with a situation that appears to be something wants your attention, and it took its time to get that from you. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it didn't just want to get my attention. I think it took reveille in torturing me. Just the evolution of the way it formed itself into the robe.
Mm-hmm.
It was slow and meticulous. It was like it was instilling fear into me. That's how I took it. Because of the span of time that it took, it was pleased with itself.
Yeah.
And like I said, the smile it showed wasn't one of friendship, it was one of mockery.
I would have ran a lot sooner than that. I give you credit. So now we've established something very evil is going on in this house. Was there anything else unusual that you saw that when you looked at it, it's like, I'm having a hard time taking this all in, what I'm seeing? I mean, did you ever see anything else that was like that just kind of make you, like something so bizarre that, like the demon, it's like, I can't believe I'm seeing this. Did anything else like that happen? Something weird that you saw in the house?
Oh, in the house?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Am I allowed to skip around chronologically?
Yeah, go ahead. Well, you navigate, and I'm just, here to listen to what you have to share.
Well, actually, there was an incident that occurred shortly after that. Some time had gone by, and my dad, like I mentioned, to make extra money, was taking these side jobs of carpentry and painting.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a while, and I so wanted to grasp his mindset of it's your imagination, you're misidentifying things, because it would have been a lot easier for me to deal with. Period. Psychologically, emotionally, mentally. But yet I knew that wasn't really the case. But one day, I guess he was a little late returning back from work, so I was starting to get a little worried. I had my light on, but I also turned on the light in his room. So I was situated on that end of the house. But something that did occur was that even though there was still twilight left in the sky,
Mm-hmm.
the rooms that weren't lit up were like very, very dark, very, very black. It didn't even look like a color, it looked like a texture. And I knew something had gone amiss at this point. It's like something's wrong. So I kept looking at the clock, and time kept escaping, and my dad hadn't returned yet. So I had the lights on. I was worried, but still somewhat maintaining myself.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when the unthinkable happened. As I was seated on my dad's bed in his room, and mind you, I had his light on. The rest of the other rooms were in darkness. I heard the pulling of a chair in the kitchen, like someone was moving a chair to seat themselves. Now, I knew I was the only person in the house. So, I started to panic. Instantly, I thought of a way to escape because I know what I had seen
Mm-hmm.
as far as the demon, and I didn't want to be alone in the house at that point. So I
Mm-hmm.
had two plans that I could use as an escape route. Quickest way would be to dart out from my dad's room, make a right, and go out the back door through the aquarium room. But these were the rooms encased in darkness, so I wasn't willing to risk that. But I knew I had to escape. So what seemed like a long time, but probably only took seconds, because I was filled with fear at that point. I opened up the bathroom door, hit on the switch, the light switch to the right of me, went to the next door, which opened up to my former bedroom, made a right, turned on the switch, and it gave me some light into the foyer, but the kitchen area where I heard the sounds were still pitch black. I opened the door and I made my way down the steps. At this point, I was glad I had escaped, but I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So I was out in the yard and I looked to the right, and our neighbor to the right of us had their lights on in both rooms. So I had a beacon of light to run towards. So I followed that. I ran towards the area of the treehouse. In this area, there was a treehouse situated, let's say 5 or 6 feet off the ground, and behind it there was a swing. So I was catching my breath in that area, feeling, I had luckily escaped the house. So I was still feeling a little winded, so I sat down in the swing, and I was feeling somewhat safe. I had the lights beside me of my neighbors, and that made me feel I was, within help's reach, sort of thing. And at the same time, I started to relax a little. The only thing that was getting to me was it started to feel cold because night was coming on. But there was no way I was going to return to go and grab a jacket and a cap. So I sat in the swing for a few seconds, and I was just trying to think about, I was just worried, like, God, I hope my dad returns soon. So I started to swing on the swing device. I'm not even sure why I did. I guess it was subconscious celebration of sorts. I made it out safely. So I was swinging back and forth, waiting for my dad to return. And I guess I had dropped my guard quite a bit, and I wasn't paying attention to my surroundings. But on the upward swing of one of the swing motions, this apparition reached down with outstretched arms and made a grasp for me. I ducked under and dislodged myself. But what the apparition looked like, it was like a male. It had like anger in its eyes. It was like showing teeth, like it was upset and angry. It was that of a male, if I had to guess age, maybe mid-20s, latter 20s. But the apparition was dressed in what seemed to be like a loincloth, something that Native Hawaiians might have worn back in the day.
Like a malu.
Yeah, I'm not sure if both events are related, like the hearing of the chair moving and this, but I thought about it and I thought, I guess the entity thought I was gloating over my escape. So it took its time to let me relax, feeling like I was victorious in escaping it. And then it lunged at me when I least expected, when my guard was down. All I remember was I unhinged myself from the swing and I landed partially in the garden where the corn was growing, but I never looked back. The only thing I could think of was to run to the street, because now at this point no place in the house or the yard was safe. I ran towards the street and I unlatched the gate and I ran upward towards a neighbor above us. He was a Filipino gentleman. His name was Totai. So I remember running up to the front of his house, and his kitchen light was on and dining room area light was on. So I knocked on the door, and he came, opened the door. I was crying and trying to explain to him what happened, and he was trying to console me. He was saying, don't worry, I will take care of you. And eventually my dad did return, and when my neighbor saw that he walked me down and explained the situation to my father. I guess, since then it was a good thing that happened, because that was the first and last time my dad returned home that late. So, if that's a consolation.
Wow. Wasn't there?
It was just terrifying.
Wasn't there a story about a hand?
Oh yeah. This was, I'm trying to think chronologically. At that point, that might have been a little later. So that, maybe a few years later. And what happened was, my Uncle Eddie, my dad's brother, and his wife, Auntie Susie, and their two children, Chris and James, they had come over. And I guess my Uncle Eddie and his wife needed to go and do some business. They were looking for a place to open a sausage factory. So they wanted to drop off the kids for a little bit. So they were discussing details and such, and I was situated in the back room on the west side of the house. And it was a small room, but that morning I started playing in there. I had my dinosaurs and my soldiers and such, and I was having a good time by myself, but my two younger cousins, I guess they were hyped up on cocoa or something, I don't know. But they were like overly gregarious, and they started like being mouthy and playing with my toys in a disorganized manner, So I guess I felt like they're being a bother to me. So after a few minutes, I got upset with them, and I kind of pushed them out the door and locked it. I would let them back in eventually, but I just wanted to let them know, if you're going to play with my things, it needs to be done in a certain manner. So all I remember, I went back to playing with my toys on the ground, and there was a bed that was situated, and there was a large queen-size bed, but it was situated on one of those large, high wrought iron type beds,
Uh-huh.
that was ancient looking and made of metal. And from below the bed crawled a hand, just a hand. It looked like a female hand because it had like a gemstone and a large ring on the ring finger. But it slowly moved out like a large spider. And when I saw it, I was just terrified. It slowly moved back like the way a large spider would move, slowly back under the bed. The hand itself looked like that of an older person who was aged, that of a female because of the setting of the stone, and the ring itself looked something that a female would wear. But I at that point I was terrified. I ran towards the door and I was trying to exit it, but the door was jammed. The whole time I was thinking like, oh my God, I turned my back on this. What if it comes back? But, what if it tries to cover my mouth or cover my eyes or something? All of these strange thoughts within seconds. But I did manage to open the doorway and I, fell forward a bit. And at this point I was like crying and whimpering and explaining what had occurred. And, I guess my dad and his brother, they both looked into the room and looked under the bed, only to discover nothing,
Mm-hmm.
But that was terrifying, Until this day, I remember that as being one of the most horrific things I discovered. I guess whatever was there decided to lend me a helping hand and let me see the error of my ways and pushing my cousins out of the room. I don't know. Just thought I would try to inject a little humor there.
I was gonna say the helping hand. Yeah, of course. And of course, that's the best thing to think about, was that it was a helping hand of some type. Uh, I know you mentioned in the course of just the experience with the house, because I know eventually you moved away and moved to Oahu and such. But
Mm.
there were situations involving. By the way, before I go into that, like with the that room that you're talking about, that's not your normal room, right? Whose room is that with the hand?
I'm sorry, what?
Whose room is that? The one where they had the hand in it?
That used to belong, that was also one of my grandmother's rooms.
Okay.
So, like, I was kind of afraid to mention that.
Hmm.
But, like I said, the hand did look female. It did look aged. It was wearing, like, this bright, could have, I'm not an expert in jewelry, I guess ruby or maybe garnet type stone.
That's
But who knows? It could have been something aligned with her. Maybe part of her still aligned herself with the house after her passing.
could be. 1 second. I heard a woman laughing in the back. Yeah, that's my roommate. I had to step away for a bit and tell her that she's laughing a little bit too loud. Unfortunately, I don't own a studio as of yet, so you'll hear like the cat every once in a while. But the cat's been getting mellow lately, guys, just to let you know. But yeah, that's what you heard. It wasn't anything paranormal. What popped into my head before we go to you moving away from the house? There was a few scary things. Again, when you think about this show, folks, okay, I at first I was going to say ghost stories of Kauai, yeah, with my guest here. And then I changed all of that because of the things that were very unusual that happened. And so two of the things that come up, and I'll ask the first one, is that about your neighbor and what you saw happen with your dad. Could you kind of like go over that as well?
Oh, yeah. Could we take a quick 1 or 2 minute break?
Sure. Sure.
Okay, and I'll be right back, I promise.
Okay. No problem. Go ahead. Take a break, my friend. You said a lot so far. So, as far as this guest that you're listening to tonight, again, this is just you're looking at the iceberg. We haven't gone to the iceberg. We haven't looked at the tip of it or anything else at all. This is his experiences that would happen to him growing up with things that are unusual. We've never really talked on this program about witches and such as well. So keep all that in mind. And then as time progresses, like I said, we're going to talk about some other strange things that had happened with him. One of the primary things that happened was Old Pully Road, which is so scary. Wait till you hear what he shares about Old Pully Road, because later on, when he lives on Oahu, eventually we get into the paranormal, and part of the reason why is something that happened with a member of my family that was taking care of a cemetery, and that's how everything started. But there's a lot to be said about that. The show about the Inogami that we're doing in October that's coming up, we're going to he's a part of that particular story as well. So stay tuned for that. Let's see what some of the people had to say here. I found out my grandfather grew up around Nuuanu. Okay, hold on one second. Apparently my uncle visited his office there and said the basement was scary. Well, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in Nuuanu. Trust me, both me and my guests have had experiences with that. So anyway, let's move along here with everything else. So yeah, your neighbor and that experience that you had. Yeah, tell us about. Yeah, tell us about
Mr. Alameda. That story.
Yeah, tell us about him first. Give us a little insight into your neighbor, just a little bit.
Oh yeah, I mean, the friendship between him and my father started almost by accident. He came over one day and wanted to have some avocados off our tree, and my dad said sure. He would reciprocate by bringing us, a huge bunch of bananas or something like that. So it was kind of based on like the barter system, where if there was something in your yard you wanted, you kind of traded for it with the other person. But it turned into like a real friendship for both of them. Our neighbors were situated right below us. It was a couple. They were Nancy and Walter Alameda. They were an older couple, but very, very charming, very, very, very civil. I mean, there was nothing pretentious about them. So as the friendship evolved, it started turning into, it was like watching, for Walter and my dad, it was like watching the rejuvenation of two old men. They would always be planning projects. One of the things that they did was they decided to make their own sausages, Portuguese sausages and blood sausages, and Mr. Almeida developed like a smoker, which he had in the yard. I mean, these were good. They were to die for. They were delicious. And the other thing was, of all things, they developed what, I guess it's a still, where you develop your own alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So they had this situated by my tree house, and it was the strangest thing. I mean, I came out in the middle of the day, and I guess they were like testing their product. So they were taking little sips and wincing in pain.
Uh-huh.
So they even let me have a little small taste because I was curious.
Mm-hmm.
And it made my whole upper body heat up. And I was so weakened in the legs, I had to sit down. And I couldn't stand for what seemed like a while. I was still a youngster, but they let me have like maybe a third of a thimbleful, but it was enough to hit me in that kind of manner.
Yeah.
But overall, they developed like this great friendship. And so on the weekends, especially, they would invite me and my father over for outdoor cookouts, like a barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Alameda, Walter, would always be in charge of when and what would be done. So normally we'd get over there just before the sun was down, and he would start barbecuing on a grill. Might be something like hot dogs or burgers, whatever it was. It was great. Um, and then afterwards, um, their daughter Ruby and his wife Nancy would sit on the porch or go in the house to talk, and it would leave the guys to their own demise, sort of. So towards the end of the evening, we would be sitting around like a open pit, like a campfire out in the yard, and we had a few plastic chairs situated out there that we would sit around. Normally, Walter and my dad would talk about projects, things they were going to do in the yard or on their home, or talk about, how the population was increasing at a rapid pace on the island, things of that nature, what was going on. But towards the very end, Mr. Alameda would always have, more times than not, one or two ghost stories that he would tell. And this is the part I looked forward to, even though they scared me. I was somewhat addicted to hearing these things. And, at the end of the night, I would beg for more stories. But, eventually the night has to come to an end. But before we left, he would have this slow gating walk back towards the house and give us this large sloping wave. I mean, he seemed like a giant. He was like, my dad was 5'5" and towered over me at the time. And I would say Mr. Alameda was probably in the range of 6'1" or 6'2". And to me, that seemed like a giant person.
Mm-hmm.
But one day, I was out in the yard, and I was, I guess, raking leaves or something. And I heard his wife, Nancy, she was calling out to me. And she was shrill about it. See, they didn't own a phone. So what she was calling out to me was, through the shrubs, she was yelling, "Call an ambulance, call an ambulance." And I didn't know how to do that. Luckily, my dad was home,
Mm-hmm.
and I relayed the message to him. I guess he made the call he was supposed to. Then afterward, we both exited our yard and ran towards them to see what had gone on. We saw Mr. Alameda on the ground. He was lying down, and I guess he was clutching his chest. His daughter Ruby was on one side, and his wife Nancy on the other.
Mm-hmm.
They were in tears, and we waited for the ambulance to come. It seemed like an eternity, because it must have taken more than 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. And eventually it did come when the paramedics arrived. They launched towards him and tried to revive him, but I guess sadly at that point it was too late. They weren't able to save him.
Mm-hmm.
So, he had passed away, and luckily Ruby, their daughter, was there to stay with the mom and console her, and they could console each other. Time went by, and I guess it was in the evening, and me and my dad was in our living room. We were watching TV, not really so much enjoying it, but more or less to fill a void in the loss of our friend. It was more of just watching it mechanically, not really enjoyment. But suddenly there was a voice from outside the window, and it was calling, "Joe, Joe." And there was something familiar about the voice. It's like I recognized it somewhat. But my dad looked out the window, and he looked and he was staring at who was out there.
Mm-hmm.
Then he looked at me and he said, "Just wait in the house. Don't leave."
Mm-hmm.
So he exited and he went outside to deal with this person. When I saw the person move by the window, I kind of recognized the gait of the person, slow, measured walk, and the obvious height of the person. This was someone who was tall, kind of straggly looking. I was starting to piece together the evidence here and where it was leading, but I didn't want to accept it. So this person walked towards the end of the yard near the garden, and my dad crossed the path of the window and he joined that person. So they were out there for a few minutes, and I saw something that they normally did at the cookouts was they would light their cigars as sort of like the ending part of the evening. So I saw this tall person who looked very, very familiar, and my father. And I could see two glows, and that was the lit part of the cigars going off. I knew who I was looking at, but my mind refused to accept it. I knew that in life, my neighbor would never, ever do anything to harm me in any way, shape, or form. But someone coming back from the dead, I wasn't quite sure of how to deal with that. After a while, my dad had returned past, going past the window and entering the house again. But the person on the other side never walked back. When I looked out the window, the silhouette of the person had disappeared, and so did the glow of the cigar. When my dad entered the house, I was too afraid to even ask who he was with, because I kind of knew who it was. And it wasn't until, I think I mentioned this to you, Phil, I mentioned years later I spoke to my dad about it. And I said, on that night in question, when you walked in towards the back of the garden, you were speaking with that tall gentleman, and I asked him directly, was that Mr. Alameda? And he didn't say yes, but then again, he didn't say no. So I guess whatever transpired, whatever he saw and heard, whatever went on between them, was just for his eyes and ears. So that's a story about the visitation of our neighbor.
Do you think that was because they were so close and they would get together and talk so often, there was like a way possibly of saying goodbye or something like that?
Well, I'm guessing that, whatever they spoke about was probably, or at least I'm hoping it was more along the lines of just saying to check on his wife and daughter to make sure they're okay. We would have done that without being asked.
Mm-hmm.
But I think maybe that might have been a concern.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew who I was looking at just by the appearance, the rituals, the slow gait, the voice, everything just added up to it being Mr. Alameda, our neighbor, coming back from the dead.
I got to say something right now before we go any further. I don't know if it's outside noises or whatever, but every once in a while, I hear very strange sounds coming on your end of the phone.
From my end of the phone?
Yeah, something strange. I don't know what it is. I mean, it could be traffic or something. Could be the way that could be the way the audio is playing out while I'm doing the recording. But some of it sounds really weird. I'll just leave it at.
That's why I was kind of hesitant of doing shows, was because
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure what kind of
Mm-hmm.
portals might be opened or such.
It sounded more like That's why I said I'm not sure. 'Cause it sounds like traffic as well. Because I know outside of where you live is a busy intersection as well. We won't, you won't divulge where you live or anything, but there's a lot of traffic that goes by there too. So it could be a number of things. The other thing that was very interesting was that your neighbor, was it a neighbor, or who was the person that was talking about your cat?
Oh, okay, yeah. This was kind of a creepy story. Um, there was an older couple that lived a few houses below the Alamedas,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a mom and pop store where they sold like beer and soda pop, chips, um, candies and stuff. It wasn't a real grocery store. It was like if you're in the neighborhood and you need this, you know, we have it. It wasn't like a grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just for small things like cigarettes and such.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things they would do was when they saw the kids in the neighborhood was they would invite me and my friends over for like cookies and lemonade or cookies and iced tea or something.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd be thankful. They were always like very nice to us.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I was by myself and they invited me over. I didn't hesitate because they were always charming and nice to me. But they invited me to the inside of their home. Normally we sat on the outside in the porch area. Um, so they invited me in. And of course I had the usual cookies and a beverage. And they were showing me trinkets of their travels, like I guess it was Disneyland was one. They had also gone to Vegas. They were showing me postcards and photographs and trinkets that they had brought back. But one of the things I noticed on, I guess it was a table next to one of the sofas. They had numerous books there, but there were a couple of books that were like large and thick. I mean, they were, you know, like phone book thick. And they were looking throughout the house for more trinkets to show me and stuff. So I peered over to these two large books. One of them said Book of Spells and Charms or something. The other one had something to do with the occult also. And this is something that they had within arm's reach of their sofa, like something that they went through always.
Mm-hmm.
So this caught me off guard. I mean, it wasn't like the colors itself were like light pastels, you know, like a salmon color or a light red or something.
Mm-hmm.
So at first glance, it wouldn't appear to be spooky. You might mistake it for a cookbook or a book of poetry or story until you read what was on the cover. From that day forth, I started to shy away from invitations they had. I would try not to make eye contact with them, just so I could avoid being invited over. So I guess one day I was out in front of our garage. I guess I was going through the mail, and I hadn't noticed, but the older man of the couple came and just seemed like he just appeared out of nowhere. I didn't see him approach, so I was caught off guard. And I guess since I've been avoiding him and his wife, maybe he felt jilted and maybe a little angered. But out of nowhere, he started to ask things like, first it was normal, like, how are you doing, Joey? How's your dad? And I would reply, we're fine. He'd be like, oh, that's good. Good, that's good to hear. Then he said, like, where's your black cat? And I was like, oh, she's around somewhere, probably in the house. And then he continued, you know, it's like his eyes glazed or something. And he started talking about a ritual. He said, oh, you know what some people do, Joey? They take the black cat and they go up into the forest. What they do is they skin the cat and they boil the cat in a cauldron till all of the meat falls off. And here I am, like, aghast at what I'm hearing. But he continued. He was like, oh, and then if you take one of the rib bones from the black cat and you hold a mirror and face it behind you in the mountains, you can see demons. And I was like terrified. It came across almost like, I didn't solicit him for advice on how to do animal sacrifice. But what it came across as was like, you're avoiding me, you angered me, so I'm going to do something to your cat. That's what it came across as to me. Mm-hmm. That he would leave saying, well, you take care, Joey, you take care, be good now, okay? Okay. And he continued with his walk. But that was kind of terrifying to hear.
I'd be scared.
I never saw that side of him.
I'd be scared. I'd be totally scared. It's like hinting at stuff, like indirect threatening of some type, but on a much more personal level,
Yeah, very personal, talking about my cat and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say something, but I was afraid. Like I said, it almost appeared like he had materialized out of nowhere, because I hadn't seen him walk up the street. So that in itself was shocking. Then, of course, what he spoke about, animal sacrifice, and he was very, very explicit with the details. Yeah, so, this was a time where you think you know your neighbors, but maybe you don't.
Yeah, you definitely don't. You don't when they do stuff like that. One of the I guess it's a much better story, if you can call it that. No, it's a better story considering that all the darkness. I mean, I put that in a descriptive, a man's encounter with darkness, and you did go through that, and I gave you a lot. I give you a lot of credit because you came out. You could have just fallen apart, had like a mental breakdown or whatever, but here you are talking with everyone here today, and they appreciate what you're saying. As an example of that, here's my friend. Where is she? Aristocat was saying that this is like a very good show, and she's really enjoying the stories, and that she likes that island that you lived on. So there are people that are responding in a very positive way to everything.
They are?
Yeah, another person said that that was a lot for a child to go through, which I totally agree. Oftentimes, children are victims of the paranormal. I kind of gave part of my story, but not the whole story, with attacks.
That was one of the reasons why I chose to do tonight's show and the content that was involved was, there might be people out there that need help. Maybe they know of a child that's going through something similar. And I'm sure with your knowledge and the knowledge of your viewers, people could either give help or give reference points of help, that if someone's going through something similar like I did, then, help is on the way. It's not far. But it was just so, even if tonight's program helps even just one child, it would have been totally, totally worth it.
I agree. I totally agree. I'm going to ask one more experience at your house, and then a few locations that you shared that are very interesting as well. So the last story I wanted to ask about is that you had an experience with what could have possibly been Pele, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, this is what I believe to have encountered was Pele.
Mm-hmm.
So this happened later on in life. I had acquired my driver's license, I believe, just that summer. And early in the morning, I'd gone to Brennickey's for a session, came back and took a shower. But I was tired, so I just went to sleep. When I woke up, I was like parched and famished. So I was looking for something to drink and something quick to eat. So I was rummaging about through the kitchen, and I heard a knock on the door, which was strange because normally my friends would just call out my name until I answered them. There would never be a formal knock on the door. So I went to the door, expecting this must be a stranger because it's not someone I know. So when I opened the door, I saw this woman. It was hard to judge her age. She had one of those looks where she could be a beautiful 24 or a beautiful 39. It was kind of hard to judge her age. She was dressed smartly. She had like a pants outfit with black shoes. She had a floral print top that was black and white. I guess it was like half-sleeved or something. Short hair. She looked like she was maybe part Asian, maybe a little Polynesian in there. But her request, I asked her, "What can I do for you? What can I do for you?" And her request was very simple. She just said, "Oh, could I just please get a glass of water?" And then I had looked in the fridge. There was no water in there. We had stuff like Diamond Head grape soda and a little bit of a container of Sunny Delight or something. I said, "I don't have any cold water to offer you. Would a chilled beverage of another kind be better?" She said, No, thank you. Just tap water would be fine." So I said, "Okay." So when I was speaking to her, though, I noticed that it was a hot day. It was already past noon. I'd woken up late because I was tired.
Mm-hmm.
So the sun was beaming out, yet there was no perspiration stains on her clothing, dressed the way she was. There wasn't even like a drop of moisture on her head rolling, which seemed uncharacteristic of someone dressed that way on a summer's day. Even the way she moved, there was like, how can you put it? She was always in perfect posture, and it didn't seem like she was trying hard to do so. So it was like the allure of her beauty was there, but at the same time, the way she moved, the way she spoke, it kind of repelled me in a little bit because it didn't seem quite natural in her movement.
Mm-hmm.
Even the way she asked, most people coming to a stranger's home would be less assertive. It wasn't like she was apologizing for asking. She merely asked. And I said, that's, someone with confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I came out to bring her request, I was thinking over all of these details. So I had brought her a glass of water, and I opened up the front door. When I looked out into the yard, no one was there. So I thought, oh, this is strange. So I walked towards the road thinking maybe she had returned back to her car for some reason or another. But when I checked the roadway, I checked up the road and down the road, there were no cars parked at all. So just to be on the safe side, I kind of walked around the perimeter of our yard, not so much as to make sure she was okay. At this point, I was, a little bit worried that she might still be there. She didn't appear to be, there was something odd about her. But I discovered she was nowhere on the property. So the next day, I went out to check the mail, and I ran into my neighbor. The Almeidas had moved and sold their property, and these were the new neighbors. The lady out by the mailbox was Mrs. McLaughlin. She was nice, and they invited me over and said I was friends with their children. But just to make a talk story with her, that I guess I mentioned what happened the day before. I said, the other day I had this woman come over, and she asked me for a glass of water. And then she began nodding her head in agreement, and her eyes were wide. And I was like, And I explained that when I came out, the woman had disappeared. She said the same thing had happened to her that day in question, the day before that. I asked her, could you describe her? And it was pretty much congruent to the lady who was in front of me with the description, ending with the same result. When she came out to give the lady her water, she had disappeared. No sight anywhere on the road or in the yard.
How long did it take from the moment you went into the house and got the water and came back out?
Oh, it was quick because, I would say it took maybe grab a glass, fill it with water, walk back out. I would say maybe 8 or 10 seconds.
Wow. That's crazy.
So we're talking about a woman totally vanishing, nowhere on the road, nowhere in the yard. But yet the same thing happened to my next door neighbor on the same day. And she described the same person with the same event happening, that when she came out with the request for a glass of water, no one was seen on the road, no one was seen on the property.
Could be Pele. You just never know. So thank you for the stories about your house. Yeah.
Yeah, it was said that she would go into the population and could disguise herself. She wouldn't necessarily have to look Polynesian. She could mimic any race. Actually, she was a spirit. And she said usually it was like for usually small requests. It's not like she was asking for something large. Something like a glass of water. The other point of it being like, I couldn't see someone in that age group going through all of that trouble to play a prank on two people in the neighborhood. It just didn't seem like it would be worth the effort. It seemed like, like young kids would knock on a door and run away. But for an adult to do something like that, it wouldn't be worth the effort in my opinion. And that's why I believe that that could have been a visitation by Pele. Just to go on record, that year there were no volcanic activity happening on the island, so we might have passed our test,
Could be.
But she did. Seeing that lady did make me a little scream, a little uncomfortable, unsettled is the word I guess I'm looking for.
Fantastic stories about your home and the things that happened either in the house or on the property or with neighbors or people in the neighborhood. I just wanted to cover a few more things, and that is, I know that you mentioned...
Oh, there was an incident of a hike.
Yeah, other things that happened. Yeah, could you bring that one up as well? And then I have like one or two more that I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah, this happened like I guess me and my friends were a little older in life. I think I was on my way to just finishing being a freshman in high school, and my other three friends were like 2 to 3 years younger. And what we were doing was trying to lobby for our independence with our parents. We were like saying, you should give us a little more leeway in places we can go to where, you can trust us. We're good kids. We're not troublemakers. We can handle ourselves. If we went anywhere, we would go as a group. So we were lobbying and politicizing to have more freedoms. And one day we requested if we could go hiking up into the nearby mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And of all things, our parents, I guess they spoke to each other and decided, they would allow this. So we were like pretty proud that we had gotten permission to do this, and they weren't going to tag along with us. So we had met one afternoon in front of my garage, and we had our little canteens filled with water. We had our walking sticks. We had one guy actually brought I guess a utility belt around his pants, and there was like a knife. So it's like, okay, well, I don't think we'll need that, but yeah, let's bring it. So we were on our way, excited about the journey. So we made our way towards the freeway, Kamala'i, which, was right below us. That was the freeway that ran past our community.
Mm-hmm.
And we had walked several minutes along the side of the road, and all of a sudden we saw this dark shadow, and it was large, and it passed right in front of us. And we were like a little bit spooked. We looked above us to see what could have caused this shadow. Whatever it was had to have been massive or large. But, we couldn't figure it out. So you could tell worry was on our faces, but we didn't want to go back home with our tails between our legs saying we saw a shadow, so we ran back home. We would look like total idiots. We thought nothing harmful happened, although it was a strange event. Nothing harmful had happened to us. So I kind of tried to sway them to continue. Well, nothing bad happened. It was a strange occurrence. We should continue. And they looked around at each other, nodded in agreement. Said, yeah, why not? So we crossed over the side of the road, and we made our way to the other side of the freeway. And it connected with pasture lands, and below was like a stream. And we followed it till the end, until we came across a fence, I guess, bordering the pasture lands. So it was still early in the day. We had only been gone, I guess, 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes at that. We didn't want to return home after just a 15-minute hike. So my friends suggested, hey, let's just follow this Kingfield Road and see where it goes. I was like, yeah, I guess we could do that. I was a little bit worried because being the eldest, if anything went wrong, I would be the one to catch hell for it. But, I thought about it and say, why not? We're all together. What's the worst that could happen? So we followed the road, and it started to go near the cane field. I guess this was one of the areas the trucks would go through to do the harvest. And we followed it till it hit a bend, and in the bend there was pasture lands and a reservoir down below. And then we just looked at it. we felt safe that the cows wouldn't breach the fence line, so we weren't too afraid of that. But then my friend suggested, hey, we're near that little mountain. Let's see if we can climb up that. And I was like, okay, why not? So we continued our journey up the mountain trail. It was a little bit steep for us. We weren't very athletic or strong. So it was taking its toll. We had been hiking for, I don't know, maybe like 40 minutes, and it was hot. And the steepness of the side of the mountain was a little rugged for us. But when we got to near the foot of the mountain, we were trying to figure out what to do, but we heard like voices of like what sounded like young voices. I was worried that maybe it would be an older couple making out or something, and I didn't want to, have them be upset at us, like thinking we're following them. So we waited a bit, and then the voices stopped. When we went to the area where the voices came from, there was like a shallow riverbed, and no one was there. But what we did discover was there was footprints, literally footprints, like someone barefoot had just walked. And I pointed this out to my friends, and they went, yeah, so what? And I was like, doesn't that seem strange? The footprints lead into the water, but it doesn't lead back out. And we had just heard some voices up here, and they seemed not as concerned as I was, because visually we weren't seeing anyone around there. So I said, okay, fine. But as we started to walk back, I noticed in the water that there was like movement, like what you get when you see a crayfish start on the bottom of the river, that little mud swirls coming up.
Yeah.
So I saw like one or two of these. But when we were examining the riverbed, there was no fish, no crayfish, no kind of life at all that I saw. So whatever had made those mud swirls, I couldn't tell you what it did. But nothing bad happened. It was one of those things like, well, maybe there was a crayfish and I just didn't see it. But we did hear those voices, and that stuck in my mind. And then that's when, started thinking about the tales about the children of the water stories, but we tried to keep that out of our mind sight. So we started to go up the side of the mountain, making our way. Eventually we got to the top. It took us quite a bit of time, quite a bit of effort. Not that it was even a large mountain. To be honest, it was probably just 130 feet in height. But the angle was a bit steep, but we made it to the top. And what we saw was a concrete roadway. And this is where the Seventh-day Adventists had situated, I guess, their church up in that area. And this is like their parking area. So we decided to just follow. There was like a wooden trail that went to the right of it. We followed that. And we were walking, taking our time. Eventually it made a right, and then suddenly you were looking forward out at the landscape. Like I said, it wasn't super high, but to us it felt high because we were young and stuff. And we took like a little break there, sipped on our water, had a little chat. And then all of a sudden we heard what sounded like little firecrackers going off. And I was thinking, what is this? And it was at a distance at first, and it was moving with rapidity. It was just so fast. and it was coming closer and it was getting louder. When we looked behind us, what we saw, it was about the height of 10 feet or so. All of the twigs, all of the branches were being snapped in succession. I mean, just one after another on both sides of the path. But we couldn't see what was doing it. Whatever was doing it was invisible. I mean, without saying a word to each other, all four of us just jumped off the side of that little mountain, and we started to like roll and fall as we fell down the slopes, and we were hitting trees, landing on rocks, rolling, cartwheeling as we fell. We made it down, I think, about a third of the way before we could actually stop ourselves because of the steepness of the mountain. When we looked up, nothing seemed to have followed us. But we decided we needed to leave and leave quickly because whatever it was, even though it was invisible, seemed pretty large. So we made our way out of the area, down the mountain slope, past the reservoir, back through the Kingfield Road, and we were heading back. We crossed the street over Kamu'awela Highway, and we were on our way home. And we headed towards my friend's place. And we were talking about what had transpired. We were saying, like, you know, we can't even mention this event to our parents because they're going to think we made it up, or we're imagining things, or maybe we're doing drugs. So that event, you know, created this close bond between me and my friends that we still have till this day if we ever got together. But it was something that we have to keep secret because we had fought so hard to gain the trust of our parents and stuff. So it was something that only we shared amongst four friends. It reminded me of a scene from the movie Ed when the youngsters got together and discussed the past. But that's a true event, and that's what happened on the hike that day.
So, what I wanted to ask you is, with all the experiences you just shared, do you feel like it was one and the same entity that was following you around? You talked about a shadow, and then the footprints and the water and everything else, and then, of course, the actual appearance or manifestation. Do you think it's the same thing?
I was trying to figure out if there was a connection. And my belief is that there was.
Okay.
I think the shadow we saw wasn't something projected from above us. I think it was a shadow that was just passing in front of us. Because there was, you know, in that area, there's a bridge, and below us there's a canal, which a stream runs through. So, you know, the legend, the urban legend of the children by the water popped into mind. Maybe the shadow was a warning not to go further. Or maybe the mud swirls like we saw in the stream was a warning not to go further. We did hear voices there of people, but we didn't see anything. So maybe all of it was intertwined.
Or maybe that's what...
Maybe this creature that came after us, you know, maybe the children of the water presented itself to be mimicking youth and something young and innocent.
I was just going to say that.
Maybe in exactness, it was probably a demonic abomination of some kind that lived out in the woods.
So I'm going to just mention a few more things here. I remember that you talked about a situation involving a place that's haunted on the island of Kauai. It's called Halfway Bridge.
Oh yeah, could we just take a little break,
Sure. Go ahead. Take a
and then
break.
I'll be right back. Right back.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
So, everybody, hopefully you're enjoying this show. Um, this one is a long one, but then again, we've had long shows before. We're going to cover a few more things, just a few more, and then we're going to wrap things up. And I will talk about when our guests will be back because we're going to go from Kauai to Oahu to experiences with ghosts over here. We will be talking about again Old Pali, Old Pali Road. I can't wait till he tells you about Old Pali Road. He did it 6 times at night, and crazy stuff happened. I mean, absolutely crazy things happened when he walked down that road, and he walked from the very top all the way down to the bottom. 6 times he did that, and there were like extraordinary circumstances that took place when he did that. So there's going to be quite a few shows with him, and we're probably going to get together and tag team on some of our experiences that we've shared together as well, because we went through some crazy stuff. And again, we're going to be doing Inogami as well. Yeah, almost a 3-hour podcast. We're on 2 hours right now. We're just going to be going over 2 more things that happened on Kauai, and then we will
Okay.
wrap that up. Okay, glad that you're back. So, just 2 more things we're going to talk about tonight. One is Halfway Bridge, and then we're going to talk about the incident at New Mill. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so, okay, so tell us about Halfway. First of all, tell us what Halfway Bridge is to give people an idea of what that is. I mean,
Well, it got its name Halfway Bridge because it was situated between the main city, Likui, and the up and coming growing town of Koloa. So it was given that moniker of being called Halfway Bridge, and that's the reason.
mhm. So, and this is a fairly common place that people drive through. I mean, it's not like when you originally told the story about it, I pictured it to be like in some desolate place, and it's so spooky to go by at night and stuff. But this is a fairly normal looking thing, right? This bridge.
Well, there's it's a little scary looking because if you're driving by it at night, it's surrounded by mountain ridges and large trees.
Mm-hmm.
So it has an ominous presence looking at it. Even in the day,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of scary looking. But it was said that back in the day, Native Hawaiians would leave offerings to Pele, so they would gain safe passage going towards the west side of the island, the dry side. So this was something that was told and spoken about way back. Also, there were tales of seeing torches in the area, that of the night marchers, which would make sense because below Halfway Bridge there was a large river, so large that they needed a long bridge to join from one side to the other. And this would have been a place where, if you're trying to develop a culture, you'd be able to grow your food products. You'd have a way of staying hydrated, Also, it was a long river, and it went down towards the south shore, so it would have been used as a pathway of travel also for Native Hawaiians.
And from what you shared, there's a
yeah. So it was well noted that a lot of people thought the reason there was like a lot of fatalities and and traffic accidents was because of these spirits roaming the area.
Specifically, like what leaning towards what type of spirits?
I'm sorry.
Specifically, leaning towards what kind of spirits?
I didn't hear you. Could you repeat that?
Yeah. What kind of spirits do you think were causing the accidents?
Well, they did speak of Kelly being there and the marchers. They said like as you go by halfway bridge, there's a road that leads downward, and it makes a right turn that leads into a rock quarry. So let's say you're Kelly, you're seeing modern people damaging and marring your landscape. You might take offense to that. And if you're on the path of a night marcher, they could cause havoc too.
Well, that makes sense because I know on this island, on Oahu, if you go out to Koaloa, and you go to
No,
that,
exactly.
yeah, that hairpin turn over there, they say that because there's burial caves and everything up in the mountains and stuff, that the marchers come from Mauka to Makai, and as they go to cross the road, that people have experienced like what looks like a silvery mist of a procession, and that the cars go
Yeah.
into that and they go out of control. They just start doing figure eights and everything, and they say that's what is probably causing the accidents and the fatalities that took place over there. So yeah, there could be a very real connection between the two that we're talking about. But there was one particular spirit that has been seen over there, and even on this island and worldwide, as a matter of fact, around the world. Again, a white lady, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm,
There's been
yeah.
a white lady seen at Halfway Bridge. A lady in white.
Yeah. Yeah,
And,
in fact, it was, I mentioned my three friends that I went hiking with. They're two brothers, and their parents claimed to have seen a ghostly apparition go over the hood of their car while they were driving past Halfway Point. They said it was a female. She was in a white gown, and she floated across the highway in front of them. So it's like, when I hear this, I take it like these are people who are strong-willed. The dad, what he does for a living is he watches the radar at Kauai. So everything he does is based on, being really concentrated, having great concentration and making fast decisions. Also, he was an avid hunter, so there's no way he would have misidentified something like a large owl going by the car. So this made them viable candidates for speaking truthfully. The mom was like, not easily frightened either. So when I heard this tale from them, I believed it simply on the basis that, misidentification would not be a factor. But they came back and they were pretty animated when they told the story.
oh, you were, yeah, that's right. You were there, right, when they came back.
Yeah, what happened was they kind of said, like, not to mention it, but they wanted me to kind of like watch over the household when the kids were there, because they had the two boys who I was friends with and a younger son also.
Uh,
So they wanted me to kind of like watch over them. But when they returned home, it was uncharacteristic of them. They were like animated. They were projecting exactly what they saw when they spoke. Um, they were pretty scared, actually, the look that they gave me. And this is something that you wouldn't normally say in front of your children, but it was so devastating to them that when they came home and they started to talk about it, they just couldn't stop. They needed to tell someone it's that horrific. And they needed to speak to another human being kind of thing, even though it was just me and their kids.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
I saw them when they returned home. They said they would just be gone long enough to have dinner, maybe see a movie. They weren't gone very long. I mean, they got home before midnight, and we were still awake watching TV and stuff.
well, all I know,
So,
if I saw
yeah,
a lady
I
in
believe
white
them when just
going,
from the look on their faces,
I guess,
they were distraught.
I guess levitating and going over the hood of the car, that,
Yeah, like I said, there's no chance for misidentification because Mr. Garcia is an avid hunter. He's familiar with anything and everything in the forest. He's a pig hunter. He's a bird hunter. Anything that needs to be hunted or fished, he does it.
amazing. So final story here tonight, and I know it's a very interesting one. We always talk about here in Hawaii, uh, where people long ago came from many different parts of the world, and when they came here, not only did they bring their food and their culture and everything else that was important, they also brought their ghosts and their spirits. And I share a story about that that's very similar but different in its own way. So we're going to talk about an incident. I call it the new mill incident that my friend is going to be talking about right now, and that's a very interesting one. So go ahead and tell us what you heard about what happened at New Mill.
Well, let's see. The fourth friend that ventured with us was my friend Robin, and before they moved to Omao, they lived at New Mill, which is near Kaloa. And these were like plantation style houses that workers, I guess, could rent and live in for, I guess, a discounted price or something.
Mm-hmm.
But one day, the mom had said something that her and a bunch of her crew, I guess the number might have been over 20 people. They had saw what appeared to be like a couple of large giants in the field. They said that they were extremely tall, over 7 feet in height. They had a putrid smell to them. They were dressed ungainly, dirty and stuff. And they were like making, dangerous advancements and screaming at the people. And the people just in that little area that they were working in, they all fled work and returned home, which at the time was something that you just didn't do to have a day off because, you lost your day's wages for one thing,
Mm-hmm.
if you were a field worker.
Mm-hmm.
The other part was if they found you to be unreliable, you could easily be replaced by someone wanting a job. So what happened was, I heard about the story and I spoke to the husband of the wife. His name was Benjamin. And I was saying, did that really happen? And he says, it actually happened. She actually returned home. She actually lost wages for the day, and she was worried about losing her job. So when he told me that, I started wondering, like, when people made the pilgrimage from, in this case, the Philippines did they not just bring themselves, but did spirits possibly store away with them on the journey and make themselves known when they felt like it? Because it just seems odd that they would take that kind of risk of losing job security. That was important if you're raising a household and stuff. So I took that to be, once the father said yes, that event did happen. I took it as that event did happen.
So a Capri, right?
I'm sorry, what?
A Capri is what you think it was, or they thought it was,
Well, that
or
was
several
the
of them.
word that the wife used, and I think that means like giant or something.
Yeah, it's pronounced either Capre or Capri.
Um,
Yes, giant.
yeah. Now I'm not sure if she saw, maybe an entity that was indigenous to the Hawaiian Islands and used the term,
Hmm.
or if it was something that she had heard or seen about in her culture.
Right.
Like I said, maybe the entities store away and followed them on their pilgrimage to the Hawaiian Islands.
Yeah, that's what people say. And you and I have had also an experience with it. We've had an experience with a giant as well. So that's an interesting way
Um,
to end. That's an interesting way to kind of like wrap things up with that. With this, I have someone saying right now, and I got to thank you for being on this program tonight. Brandon Matsuoka said, "Excellent show tonight." Lewis said, "Nephilim, perhaps Bigfoot." He was talking about what happened with Halfway Bridge. He said he would be in a panic mode and then start to investigate because he does that kind of stuff. But you've been
okay.
getting a lot of positive feedback and interest in everything that you shared here tonight. And like I said, folks, it wasn't going to be ghost stories of Kauai. It's scary stories about Kauai, or a person's experience living in a place where unusual circumstances happen. We've heard everything about witches and people returning from the dead, and other various types of encounters as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And like I said, I did it with the premise that if it helps one one young child, then it was totally reliving the horror. It was totally worth reliving all of the horror that I went through.
yeah, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that. What I wanted to share with everyone else is, like I said, this is an introduction to my guest tonight. And thank you for sharing such positive things. If you want to, I know some people had to leave, but if there's any other questions, that would be, that's fine. We can ask, we can do that right now. And if not, we will be doing some other things in the future, other interviews with my friend here. Smarty Pants says, I hope I never have to encounter ghosts after hearing Joe's stories. I pray that I never have the same encounters he did. That sounds spooky. I totally agree. Absolutely agree with you on that. Let's see, we got people talking. Aristocat is saying, this story reminds me of my friend who sat in her car at a park when suddenly a shadow appeared fronting in front of her car, and then she hears tennis balls and no one's there. That's scary. That is scary, Aristocat. Bless his poor soul. He's been through a lot. Oh yeah, you have no idea. My friend has been through, and we're just talking about Kauai. There's going to be the next set of interviews will be, of course, him moving over here, getting involved with the paranormal. Wait till you hear about old Polly. I keep saying that, but it's just like how I told you. You gotta. I can't wait for you to meet him. I've been telling you folks this for about a month, on and off, and if this is scary, trust me, spooky is coming up next, very spooky stuff with what my friend has gone through. There's a lot of things to talk about: spirit photography, orbs, all kind of things. So look forward to those shows that are coming up as well. And as always, thank you guys to as always to be here and share your thoughts and everything else. And I agree, we have a very amazing guest here this evening. People love this. People love this show. I haven't even.
Really? They liked it?
Yeah, I haven't even. We haven't even said good night, and they're saying that. Kimchi Squirt said, "Very interesting show. Thank you. You're very welcome." And like I said, it just was in its own category of scariness, and indeed scary. If I saw that demon, yeah, I'd be out of there really, really quick. Trust me, I'd be out of there. Lewis says, "I hope I don't get nightmares tonight." That's you're in good company because I feel the same way. I don't want to get any nightmares tonight myself, and I don't wish anything on my friend as well. But trust me, we've approached the iceberg. Now we go to the tip of it in the next show with my friend Joey Sereno, and we will proceed from there and take a path from the top of that iceberg down a very scary, well-known road, which I consider to be one of the most haunted places in the world. Trust me, it is, because New Wanapali Drive is scary too. But wait till you hear about Old Pali Road. I can't keep saying that enough. So when you see me post that about my guests returning to talk about these things or any shows, please let your friends know. And as well, please, again, share this with other people. Halloween's coming up, guys. It's going to be here sooner than you think. And my friend here is going to be part of that. So if you want to get a hold of me, my friend doesn't have any social media at all or anything like that. So I guess if you want to contact him, you can let me know and I will give him the message. But you already know how to contact me, but let's go over that really quick. On Facebook, you can find me under my name, Obaki Hunter. Ghosts of Hawaii is one of my groups. 808 Most Haunted, which is getting really big, really fast. I'm having a hard time keeping up with it. Probably going to need to get a moderator. If you want to join those groups or be a friend, just say who you are. Usually you got to answer 3 questions. You don't have to do it that way. But you can find me on Facebook. Instagram again, ghosts_of_Hawaii. What else do I have? Oh, on TikTok, it's just simply Ghosts of Hawaii. You can find me there as well. Of course, on YouTube, you can find me. Or you can go to my email, which is obakihunter51@gmail.com. All lowercase, yeah. OBAKEHUNTER51@gmail.com. Feel free to get a hold of me. Leave a comment if you like it. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this show. And I've been enjoying the experiences thus far. And let me see what other people have said here. Smarty Pants said, I've been through a lot myself. So when I hear that someone has been through a lot, it hurts my heart and soul. Yeah, but keep in mind that, my friend here, Sereno, he can say it again, but he shared his experiences so that other people don't have to feel alone in what they went through. Correct, Joe? I guess so.
Yeah, that's the whole reason I did what I did tonight, was to let people know that there is help out there.
Mm-hmm. So there you have it, everyone. Kimchi Squared says, oh, by the way, I shared the play document to your Gmail so you can read it now. Oh, cool. Yeah, there's something coming up with Kimchi Squared as well, folks. That should be very interesting, but it's a work in progress with what Kimchi is doing. But thank you for sharing that, Kimchi. I appreciate that as well. So again, thank you all for being here tonight. I'm going to wrap things up right now. Probably the next show, they should have a haunting show, Hawaiian style. Yeah, I agree. Probably the next show will be, I will have my guests return We're having Joe Puno come back. And this time we're going to be talking about ghost stories of Manoa Valley. Oh, and by the way, trust me and my friend Sereno, which is what I call him all the times.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and my friend we got some stories about Manoa Valley. So you'll be hearing those.
Oh, yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
So many stuff. Go ahead. Go ahead. What were you going to
no, I
say?
was just thinking, like, in an episode like that, like, if there was some way I could get some of the photographs that I took inputted on that show to give someone, a visual aid as to what was going on.
I can probably do one at a time or something like that because when I post, I might be able to figure it out with Photoshop. I might be able to I might be able to do multiple photos, like say 3 or 4 in one grid that I can do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he has photos, guys, and they're scary. One of them has to do with our show that's coming up. That's very very personal near Halloween. It's a really scary photograph. He's got quite a few scary photographs. Um, let's see. Smarty Pants is saying, "Sorry, but I'm not going to create a Facebook account just to follow your page. The last thing I need is to be distracted by social media." Smarty Pants, that's entirely up to you. No one is saying do that. You find whatever. That's why I give you folks multiple ways to contact me. And I'm not saying follow me this way or follow me that way, Smarty Pants. I'm giving you opportunities to find different ways to communicate. That's all. That didn't have to be said. Trust me. That did sound a bit rude, but that's okay. I let it go. But yeah, feel free to contact me anytime you have a chance to do so, or for whatever reasons you have. Kimchi, I will be looking at your play. I'm very, very interested by that. And we will go over what type of sound clip that you want to use. And I know that we both know what we're talking about when you say that. And just let me know what it is. And you can go, yes, Kimchi, you can go ahead and do that. Not a problem at all. So again, I don't take offense to what you said, Smarty Pants. I'm just telling people that there's different ways to contact me at all. I mean, that's the only thing I'm saying. So take that as a good thing, not a bad thing. Okay, my friends, thank you all for being here tonight. I really enjoyed reading your posts and your comments. And thank you for enjoying the show. And there will be one coming up. And Smarty Pants says, and that's noble of Joe. It's nice to know that there are people that can empathy with other people's situations and stuff. You all take care. Joe, hold on. After I sign off, we'll share a few more words and try to get the next show lined up. And you folks are in for more scary stuff. Trust me. This is just the beginning. Take care, everyone. Ghosts of Hawaii, your home for a dose of ghosts and something that floats over your car at Halfway Bridge. Until next time, take care. God bless. Aloha. And I will talk to you then.